risk, of course, with this, like I mentioned earlier, is if the non-machined part of the camshaft is making contact with the head, which I guess this part is still machined, but it's not as precision as the bearings themselves. If that rougher part of the camshaft, which is steel, is rubbing on the aluminum in a place that's not a bearing surface, that's where we run into problems with metal deterioration, galling and balling up, and metal shavings going into the oil and all kinds of bad things. So I think that's pretty good for balance though, so we'll take these back down. Okay, then we can bring over cap numéro 3. Always good, especially when you're doing big things like internal engine stuff, to double check that you've got things right. Because otherwise it can cost you a lot of time, extra time, to fix the problem, and could cost you money if you put something together in a way that it wasn't supposed to be and it resulted in damage to the engine. Alright, so these can get snugged and there shouldn't be much to it because it's already bottomed, which is good. Good sign that everything is straight and square, and that the other caps pulled the shaft down all the way, which is always a concern. Okay, so we could put the oil seal on so that we can do the number 1 cap, or we can just go ahead and torque the other 3 for now and then come back to the oil seal. I think that's what we're going to do. We'll torque up the 3 caps that are on there now. So I'm going to go look up the torque spec here for the nuts. Number 2, camshaft bearing cap nut, 15 foot-pounds. So yes, indeed, 180 foot-pounds. My mental math has not failed me yet. So this thing is good to 250. So 180 inch-pounds is no problem. I think again we're going to do 90 first. That's 85 and 5 is 90. And we're going to start in the middle and work our way out. Probably last thing before the valve cover goes on at the end, I'll probably run over those again. 1 or 2 clicks each just to double check, make sure they're all the same, because we'll have all 5 caps on by that point. The other thing I want to check here right now, before I forget, is whether there's a retorque period on those. I know there are for head bolts, but I don't think there is for camshaft. So, last thing I'm going to do for right now, just to inhibit rust, is brush all of the lobes with a bit of oil so that they don't surface rust before they get to the point of operation. So, next thing will be to clean up the groove there one more time and clean up the top of the head, the valve cover surface, and put the new oil seal on. And then the bearing cap can go on for the camshaft end. And like the book says over there, you have to have a little bit of sealant underneath the corners of the cap, because there's nothing to seal the cap to the head other than just the two machined surfaces, which are not going to hold any kind of oil pressure. Not that there's much oil pressure up here, it basically just comes up through the passages and then flows back down to the oil pan. But if you get oil coming through there and it gets on the timing belt, it's all for naught. So we're not going to have that. So we'll make sure that the valve cover, like I said before, has to be all coated with RTV anyways. So, clean up this part to do the seal on the cap, but then the whole valve cover surface on the head and on the cover itself have to be sterilized, and make sure there's no burrs or anything, high sections. Nothing we can do about low sections except fill them with sealant. And then this bearing cap for the vacuum pump cannot go on until we have done our belt timing. So we'll get the oil seal on and get this cap on and torqued, and then the camshaft sprocket will go on loose. Then we can put our new timing belt idlers and tensioner on and belt, put the new belt on, and we'll make sure the camshaft is set in the right position with our block and feeler gauges, which that's one thing I never did that I should do, is I don't know how I'm going to turn it now with no, maybe I can't turn it right now. I wanted to find out or confirm if maybe I can do it this way. I really hate the possibility of making a mess, but actually let's wire brush these first. I want to try and put the camshaft timing block in if I can, to know if it's even going to work with this camshaft. I really hope it will, because otherwise I don't know what I'm doing for valve timing. So I really hope. So let's just see. This should be the way that you should be able to turn this thing. Let's just see here if I can do it without making metal shards all over everywhere. Yeah, there we go. Where's my timing block? Should be okay. Oh, look at that. Oh, damn, I'm good. Not to pat myself on the back or anything, but there you go. Ta-da. I think it's actually a little bit looser than the original, which is fine, just makes it easier to get in. But you have to still do the same process, make sure that the feeler gauges, and again we'll talk about that when we get to there, feeler gauges under both sides of the block are the same thickness, same measurement, thousandths of an inch. And then that tells us that the valve timing is set where it needs to be. The crankshaft will be on its mark. The injection pump still has its pin in, and we'll probably set the slots on the injection pump sprocket over here, which you can't see what I was pointing to, but we already looked at it before. The slots on the injection pump sprocket there, we'll probably set those close to the middle so that there is room for adjustment. I don't know if you guys could see anything I was pointing to there, but we already talked about it all before. So yeah, that's the rundown again. Next part will be to get that new camshaft oil seal in, clean up the head surface on the cap, get some RTV on it and put that on and torque it up. Then we can finish up the timing belt itself and finish the valve timing. And before we get the engine full of any more seeds, we can finally get the last bearing cap on and the valve cover and the vacuum pump. And then it'll be closed up and safe again, somewhat. All right, so camshaft seal now. There was a bit of a discrepancy that's slightly concerning. As far as the old seal that I took out is a part number letter code D, as in dog, and the one that's supposed to be in it is a C as in cat. So I don't know if somebody just put the wrong seal in it, and that's maybe why it was leaking more than it should have been, or if for whatever reason this model year, although we have 2 other 2002s, maybe this one had a different camshaft seal. I don't know. I'm gonna put the proper one on, assuming that it'll fit. 083, 103, 085C is the one that's supposed to be in it, based on our documentation. So that's what I'm gonna put in. Once again, same as the crankshaft seal. I forget the name of the material, but because it's the special material, you put it on dry. You don't want to touch the inner sealing surface with your skin. Of course, it's also important that the taper for the camshaft sprocket is clean, otherwise it's maybe number one, not going to actually bite and could slip, but also could just make a huge mark in the taper surface if there's a piece of debris in between there when you tighten it up. So I think it should be good to put, you need oil at the bottom again. Should be good to put the new seal in here, I think. It's pretty good. Alright. Let me get into it. So again, handle the seal only by the outsides. Do not touch the inner sealing surface. And again, it goes on dry, which is against all fundamental rules of oil seals. And just put it on the same way that it was, assuming that that was the correct way. And again, it's the same as the crank. The surface with all the numbers and everything on it should be facing out the front of the engine, and the inner part that's kind of like a cup should be to the inside. So, seal looks good. This one should be a lot easier to install than the crankshaft one, because there is not a sharp edge you have to contend with. And then trick is to just try and get it straight and square. Not that it won't seal if it's not perfectly perpendicular, but it's certainly going to do a better job if it is. Fairly happy with that because we have, what the heck is that? Oh, for crying out loud. Oh. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. They do make it the hardest thing in the world to install these seals without hurting them. And I think we've destroyed it. I didn't even do anything wrong. Yep. Friggin' mangled it because this stupid keyway. Gonna focus. Stupid keyway grabbed it on the way by. So I don't know if I can save that now or not. Stupid. Such a horrible design. I don't know how you're supposed to do it without destroying stuff. There we go, finally. I don't know if it's going to leak or not, but at least the part that's potentially damaged is at the top. So the only way it would really leak is to have pressure being sprayed up at it, which it won't have. So hopefully that'll be okay. I really don't want to buy another seal anyways, not that I could get it today if I wanted to, being Saturday. So hopefully. So yeah, another classic example of a terrible design. How you can have a shaft that you have to put a new seal on, and you can't put the new seal on without destroying it, unless you have probably some super fancy dancy tool, which I'm not going to spend the money on even if it did exist. But anyway, now we can actually get the head surface cleaned up, get the bearing cap surface cleaned up, put some RTV on there to kind of make up the rest of the valve cover seal, and then we'll be on to the timing belt itself. Okay, so might be a good idea in this case to use a little tiny bit of brake cleaner on a towel. Where did that brake cleaner go? You don't want to spray it on there, obviously, because then of course you're getting brake cleaner into the engine, which is not at all a smart idea. Or any solvent for that matter. I'm just going to put a little tiny bit on a towel here, so that it'll cut the oil film, because we are going to try and put RTV on, which does need to be somewhat clean if you want it to be effective. Yeah. Somebody put goop on here before, so at least somebody knows about the valve covers not sealing very well. This should be pretty good. And we'll spick and span the rest of that when we're ready to put the valve cover on, which we can't do until the timing is all set and done, so no rush on that. Okay, so that's pretty good for the front, I think. Do the same for the back. And then we just got to clean up the bearing cap. And then as long as we don't let the as long as we don't let the camshaft sprocket grab on the taper before we're actually ready for it to, then we should be in business. So, cap is ready to go on. And so we need some RTV now. Can't really see the whole thing here, but I usually just use Permatex Ultra Black, which is, you know, made for oil as a gasket maker kind of thing. Hopefully this one is still okay, or we might have to get a new tube, since you're not supposed to, I don't think you're supposed to store it once it's opened. You're supposed to use all of it, or whatever amount you're going to use, and then it's pretty much garbage, because it'll cure on its own. So I'm gonna fight to try and unclog this tube, and hopefully there'll still be some in there that's not cured, and if not, I guess we're gonna go to plan B. Alright, so I was able to get the tube going here again. This is right in the way, of course. And we're gonna do, let's just do this for a second so I don't have to lean over the engine to do this. Oop. We're just going to put a nice coat of RTV around the outside of where the seal is going to actually seal, because you never know if the seal will make a good oil resistant surface with the actual cap here. And then we'll also put some on these 2 points, because the valve cover gasket does not help seal that, and somebody's mangled the crap out of this cap on the edges, so all the more reason to make sure we're going to have a good seal so we don't have oil coming out the end of the engine onto our fresh timing belt and everything. So I'll try and do this here. Probably have to back over it with a finger afterwards, but probably way more than it needs to be, but again, I'd rather it squeeze out a little than be shy and not make a good seal. It's not the end of the world if it squeezes out the inside. So because I'm dumb and forgot to empty all of the footage off of my phone before beginning to record here again, we ran out and it cut off in the middle of me putting the RTV on the cap there, and then of course RTV is a time sensitive thing, so all you missed was I basically just cleaned up the bearing surface and the head surface one more time, put some more oil on the camshaft, and then stuck the cap down in there and torqued it up, same as we did for the other 3 before. So nothing really missed there. And then later on, when we're ready to do the valve cover, I'll just do one more quick cleanup of that top surface and RTV the entire perimeter of the valve cover. That way we don't have oil leakage otherwise. So that wraps up the camshaft seal. So next thing is to get the cam sprocket and all of the idlers and tensioner back on, and then we can actually put our new timing belt on. We got to clean up the crankshaft sprocket a little bit yet from the coolant from doing the water pump. But other than that, we might be able to get a belt on here soon, and then set the camshaft timing with the feeler gauges exactly, and then make sure our crankshaft is on the top dead center mark exactly. And then we can put the belt on, and we'll try and put the camshaft sprocket, or not the camshaft sprocket, the injection pump sprocket there in the middle of its slots, so that we have some playing room for adjustment later. And then we'll probably, we're gonna tighten the belt all up and the tensioners and everything, and rotate it around a couple of times, and then check it again to see how close we ended up. But then after that, we'll probably leave the timing belt for now. I'll go back to getting the intake ports cleaned of tar, basically, from the oil, and get the intake manifold's got to be cleaned too, but probably get the turbo on next, the new turbo, or freshly rebuilt turbo, and get the oil line replaced, and then get the intake manifold put on with fresh gasket, and start to button things up, getting closer towards being done here. Still have to change the tie rods, and it would be nice to look at what's making the exhaust clatter, but it may not happen this time around since I'm already way overdue on how long this was supposed to take. So yeah, let's just try and bang it out here.